Dean Ambrose reacts to Roman Reigns and Jey Uso SummerSlam match against Seth Rollins faction. Dean Ambrose breaks silence on Roman Reigns and Jey Uso's SummerSlam showdown. What does the Lunatic Fringe really think about his former Shield brothers going to war at WWE SummerSlam? In this explosive video, we dive deep into Dean Ambrose's reaction to the highly anticipated SummerSlam match featuring Roman Reigns and Jey Uso versus Seth Rollins faction. With the WWE Universe buzzing over betrayals, alliances, and chaos leading up to this epic battle, Ambrose's response might just shock you. He had been quiet for months. Almost too quiet. The kind of silence that doesn't just come from distance, but from wounds left unspoken. While the WWE Universe tore itself apart over Roman Reigns and Jey Uso aligning for one last shot at Seth Rollins' powerful faction, one name lingered in the shadows like a ghost no one dared to summon. Dean Ambrose. Or, as the world now knows him, Jon Moxley. For years, he had been the unpredictable heartbeat of the Shield. The wild card. The chaos agent. But now, as Roman and Jey prepared for war at SummerSlam, together again for the first time since betrayal and bloodlines shattered their worlds, the wrestling world turned to Moxley. Not as a wrestler. Not as a champion. But as a man. A brother. A witness to the rise, fall, and possible rebirth of a bond that once ruled WWE. He hadn't been on WWE soil in years. And yet, the echoes of that brotherhood still followed him like scars that refused to fade. The announcement of the SummerSlam Tag Team War had shaken the foundations of WWE storytelling. Roman Reigns, freshly returned after weeks of silence and internal bloodline collapse, shocking the world by joining forces with Jey Uso, his former adversary turned reluctant ally. Across the ring, they would face a dangerous unit, Seth Rollins' new faction. An alliance soaked in ego, vengeance, and strategic violence. To many, it was the battle of generations. But to Moxley, it was something else entirely. A trigger. And then, finally, he spoke. His words didn't come through a press release. There was no flashy promo package. No ominous vignette rolling on Raw or SmackDown. It came in the form of a quiet, unlisted video posted to a private channel intended, perhaps, for fans who knew where to look. And within 45 minutes of it going live, it had already leaked across Twitter, Reddit, and wrestling news outlets. The thumbnail was simple. A bottle of whiskey. A single candle. And Moxley himself, head down, hoodie pulled over his brow, knuckles clenched. The video opened with silence. No music. No pyro. Just breathing. And then he spoke. "I saw the announcement," he said, voice gravelly, as if pulled from the depths of a memory he'd been trying to bury. "Roman. Jey. Seth. All three of you. The boys I went to war with. The boys I bled with. Now tearing each other to shreds in front of the world. SummerSlam. I guess it was always gonna come to this, huh?" There was a tremble in his voice, not weakness, but rage barely caged. The kind of simmering honesty only someone who had truly walked through fire could speak with. What followed was not a promo. It was a confession. A reckoning. He didn't call himself Dean Ambrose. Not once. That man, he said, was gone. Buried under years of manipulation, creative puppeteering, and a version of brotherhood that sometimes felt more like a leash than a lifeline. But that didn't mean he'd forgotten. Because some bonds don't break with time. They fracture. And fractures? They echo. "I didn't leave the Shield because I hated you," he said, locking eyes with the camera. "I left because I hated what we were becoming. We went from soldiers to statues. From wolves to puppets. Somewhere along the way, we stopped fighting for each other and started fighting for approval. For control. For something none of us could name." His hands shook as he lit a cigarette. One inhale. Then another. Then silence. Until his gaze narrowed. "And now I'm watching Roman Reigns, the tribal chief, the God Mode nightmare himself, stand next to Jey Uso. Like none of that history matters. Like Jey didn't superkick his soul out of his chest just a year ago. And across from them? Seth. The visionary. the manipulator in Messiah's clothing. But don't get it twisted. I know what this is. This isn't a wrestling match. This is a funeral. That line hit like a steel chair to the gut. He wasn't just talking about the match. He was talking about the death of what the Shield once was. The end of an era. And the impossible hope that maybe, just maybe, it could have ended another way. Backstage sources revealed that WWE executives were caught completely off guard by the video. While it wasn't technically a violation of any contract, Moxley is a free agent. After all, it sent shockwaves through the locker room. Some called it a work. Others insisted it was a shoot. But one thing was clear, Moxley's reaction was raw, unscripted, and real. According to those close to the situation, Moxley hadn't spoken to Roman or Seth in over a year. The last time they exchanged messages was after WrestleMania 40, when Roman lost his undisputed title and Seth reportedly tried to reach out, only to be met with silence. And yet, Moxley had been watching. Always watching. I see the lies you both tell yourselves, he continued in the video. Roman, pretending like he's still the leader. The protector. The big dog who holds it all together. And Seth, acting like this is about wrestling. About being the best. But we all know better, don't we? His voice cracked. This is about pain. This is about betrayal. This is about three men who were supposed to die for each other, now trying to destroy each other in front of the whole damn world. WWE Creative reportedly scrambled in response to the video's virality. Within hours, reports surfaced that Triple H had called an emergency meeting to discuss whether the video should be acknowledged on television. Some producers believed it was too powerful to ignore. Others worried that giving it airtime would blur the lines between fiction and reality in a way WWE wasn't ready for. But for the fans, it was already too late. Twitter erupted. Hashtag Moxley Speaks trended globally. Instagram flooded with Shield tributes, fan edits, and fantasy bookings. The idea of Ambrose returning, perhaps even showing up at SummerSlam, was no longer a pipe dream. It was a wildfire. And yet, the video didn't promise anything. Moxley never teased a return. Never hinted at interfering. In fact, what he did next only deepened the mystery. He opened a small notebook. One lined with scribbled notes, dates, and phrases only he understood. He flipped through until he found the page he was looking for. Then, in a whisper, he read a line written in faded ink. Brotherhood ends in silence, or in blood. He closed the notebook, looked directly at the camera, and said, "Which will it be, boys?" Then the screen faded to black. No credits. No outro. Just the sound of the candle flickering until it disappeared. Behind the scenes, multiple WWE superstars reportedly reached out to Moxley in private. Some to support him, others to plead with him. A few, who requested anonymity, claimed that Roman himself saw the video within the hour of its release. He didn't say a word. But those present said he stared at the screen for several minutes, then walked out of the locker room without a word. And Jey? According to a source close to the Anoa'i family, Jey was visibly emotional. He looked like he'd seen a ghost, the source said. Ambrose was never supposed to weigh in. That video, it messed him up. But perhaps the most surprising reaction came from Seth Rollins. Seth, who had spent the last year leading a new faction of chaos, had seemingly closed the chapter on his past with the Shield. He had risen to become the architect of his own destiny. A Messiah reborn in style, cruelty, and manipulation. But even he couldn't ignore what Moxley had unleashed. On a backstage segment filmed just days before Raw, Seth reportedly stopped mid-promo. When asked what viewers could expect from his faction at SummerSlam, he paused, stared into the camera, and muttered one word. Mox. The segment was cut from the final airing. Speculation spread like wildfire. Could this be the beginning of something bigger? Was Moxley planting seeds for a return? Or was this simply closure, one man trying to make peace with the past as his former brothers prepared to destroy each other? Sources inside AEW noted that Moxley had recently taken personal time and canceled 2 appearances citing unforeseen circumstances. No official explanation was given, but those close to him said he'd been reflective. Quiet. spending hours alone in his private gym, rewatching old Shield matches, and scribbling in that same weathered notebook. But the deeper story wasn't about a comeback. It was about grief. Moxley's video wasn't about ratings or fantasy booking. It was about three men who built something no one could replicate. Three men who once called themselves brothers. And now, at SummerSlam, those same men, through legacy, alignment, or loyalty, were preparing to end that brotherhood in the most violent way imaginable. "I don't care who wins," Moxley had said. "Because either way, we all lose something that night." For the WWE Universe, that statement hit harder than any chair shot. Because it wasn't just about Roman and Jey versus Seth's faction. It was about the soul of the Shield. The ghost of a bond once believed to be unbreakable. And the painful truth that even the strongest brotherhoods sometimes end not in glory, but in ashes. And in that haunting silence, maybe, just maybe, we all understood why Moxley had stayed quiet for so long. Because some wounds don't heal with time. They fester. And on the night of SummerSlam, when Roman Reigns, Jey Uso, and Seth Rollins finally collide, the echoes of the Lunatic Fringe will still be there. Watching, waiting, and silently asking, what have we become? He didn't sleep that night. Three men, clad in black, fists raised in unity, crashing into the WWE like a violent prophecy. The echoes of that moment still rang in his chest. But now, years later, those echoes had turned into cracks. He reached for his phone once, hovered his thumb over Roman's contact, then Seth's, then back to Roman's again. But he never pressed call. Because some conversations are too heavy, too jagged to hold without bleeding. Backstage at WWE, the impact of Moxley's words couldn't be ignored. For the creative team, it wasn't just a rogue promo, it was an emotional sledgehammer. The writers debated scrapping planned SummerSlam vignettes altogether. Because how do you write a story when real-life ghosts start speaking? In private circles, it's said that Triple H and Paul Heyman took separate calls that night. One with Roman, one with Seth. Both conversations, according to insiders, ended with long silences and few words. Neither man expected Moxley to speak. Neither man knew how to respond. Meanwhile, Jey Uso reportedly locked himself in his hotel room in Nashville. His close friend, Sami Zayn, flew in early for SummerSlam weekend and was spotted leaving Jey's suite with his head low and his phone pressed tight to his chest. When approached by reporters, Zayn simply muttered, "Not now, man. Not now." Something had changed. Something that went beyond the match. In the days leading up to SummerSlam, WWE's marketing machine adjusted. Suddenly, the official trailer added slowed-down Shield music layered beneath the chaos. Old clips of Rollins, Reigns, and Ambrose intercut with shots of Jey standing between them, symbolically caught in the middle of a war not entirely his. One fan-made edit went viral on TikTok, racking up over 20 million views in just 48 hours. It was simple, a black screen, Roman's voice saying, "Believe that," followed by Moxley's gravel whisper, "We all lose something that night." Then silence. No music. No finish. The narrative had shifted. This wasn't just another pay-per-view match. This was personal. Moxley's name, unspoken in WWE for years, was now on every commentator's tongue. Fans wondered, would he show up? Would he be the final twist in a match already bursting at the seams with betrayal? But for Moxley, this wasn't about a surprise return. It was about grief. Grief for a family that never quite got to say goodbye. In an exclusive interview granted to a close friend at a local indie radio station, Moxley expanded unofficially. The audio wasn't meant for mass release. But it leaked, like all things eventually do. "I don't want to be part of it," he said, his voice hollow. "I just want to say what nobody else will say. We built that Shield out of pain. All three of us. We were broken when we got here. Wrestling saved us, and then broke us all over again." He paused. "I still love those guys. That's the part nobody gets. I love Roman. I love Seth. Even if I don't agree with who they are now. That love doesn't disappear just because the gear's off or the contract's up." The interviewer asked him the inevitable, "If they called, would you pick up?" A pause. Then a sigh. Probably. And that one word sent shockwaves through every corner of the wrestling world. Would Ambrose actually return? Would he walk into SummerSlam unannounced, fists taped, eyes burning, just to stop his brothers from tearing each other apart? But Moxley never said that. In fact, he never said he wanted to fight again. Because this wasn't about the ring anymore. It was about memory. In Montecito, far from the noise, Roman Reigns sat with his children in the living room. The footage of Moxley's video played on his iPad, just out of reach of young eyes. Alone, he watched it again. And again. And again. Each time, his jaw clenched tighter. Not out of anger, but out of something deeper. Something heavier. Regret. He had never replied to that last message from Moxley. The one sent months ago, after Roman collapsed backstage during a Raw taping. Moxley had texted, "I'm hearing things. You good?" That was it. No fluff. No performance. Just one brother checking on another. Roman never answered. Now, that silence echoed louder than anything the crowd could ever chant. Seth Rollins, on the other hand, took a different path. At a closed-door promo shoot, when asked to record new backstage interviews for SummerSlam, he pushed the camera crew away and started talking straight to the lens. Unfiltered. "You want to talk about the Shield?" he spat. "You want to bring ghosts back from the dead? Fine. Let's talk." He stepped closer to the camera, fury flaring in his eyes. "I gave everything to that group. Everything. And for what? Roman wanted power. Ambrose wanted freedom. And his voice cracked. I just wanted us to matter. I wanted us to be more than pawns for the next big story." He laughed. Bitter. Cold. "But I see now. We were never brothers. We were fire in a bottle. And fire always burns out." That promo never aired. But it was leaked by someone inside production. Fans went into a frenzy. WWE forums were flooded with theories. Was this match a Shield funeral disguised as a tag team main event? Was this all building to something none of them could control? Triple H himself addressed the speculation during a press junket. When asked about Moxley, he smiled faintly and said, "Some ghosts never really leave the ring, do they?" Cryptic. But telling. And then, just 48 hours before SummerSlam, a strange report surfaced. One of the production trucks had been repainted. Instead of the usual imagery of championship belts and high-flying spots, it was wrapped in black and gray. 3 fists. Raised. No names. No titles. Just the symbol. The Shield. Social media erupted. Some thought it was a tease. Some thought it was a red herring. But for many, it was something else entirely. A eulogy. The night before SummerSlam, Roman Reigns reportedly walked the arena alone. No entourage. No bloodline. Just him. Security guards say he stood at the very top row of the empty stadium, staring down at the ring for over an hour. He didn't speak. He didn't move. Until one guard finally approached and asked, "Everything good, Chief?" Roman turned, nodded, and replied, "Just remembering." Back at the hotel, Seth Rollins watched footage of their Shield debut in his suite. He'd done this before every big match. A ritual. But this time, he watched it differently. He didn't study the pacing or crowd reaction. He studied their faces. His. Roman's. Dean's. Frozen in time. Fists raised. Unbreakable. He paused the screen. Took a photo. And then sent it in a private group chat that hadn't been used in 3 years. No text. Just the image. No one replied. Not yet. Because the match was still to come. And so was the fallout. And somewhere across the country, in a quiet room filled with candlelight and dust, Jon Moxley sat by himself. Watching. Waiting. Not for a return. But for closure. Because once the fists fall, once the match is over, once the crowd stops cheering, what remains of the Shield is what they choose to bury. Or what they dare to keep alive. And only 3 men can decide that. The night of SummerSlam arrived like a storm, thick with tension, roaring with anticipation, and charged with a kind of electricity that no amount of promotion or production could fabricate. This wasn't just another main event. This was a reckoning. Inside the sold-out stadium, over 70,000 fans packed into their seats, chanting names that once stood for unity but now echoed with division. Roman, Jey, Seth. Every cheer clashing with boos, every scream drowning in speculation. But one name haunted the air like a ghost still lingering in the rafters. Moxley. There were no chants for the Shield. No fist symbols in the crowd. Just tension. Thick. Palpable. The kind of emotional pressure that builds not from athletic hype, but from history. From betrayal. From memory. Backstage, Roman Reigns sat alone in the locker room. No Usos. No Paul Heyman. No Solo Sikoa. Just the tribal chief and the deafening quiet. He had already wrapped his wrists. The white tape bore scribbles only he understood, names, phrases, fragments of a past he both resented and needed. He looked into the mirror not to see himself, but to see who was missing beside him. He whispered it, almost involuntarily, Ambrose. Down the hall, Jey Uso was pacing. Hoodie over his head. Headphones in. Eyes wild. But those who knew him best could tell, he wasn't listening to music. He was trying to silence the noise in his head. Because this match wasn't just about backing Roman. It wasn't just about fighting Seth. It was about choosing a side in a war that had started long before he ever entered the battlefield. And somewhere deep down, Jey knew, no matter who won tonight, a piece of him would be lost in that ring. In a separate wing of the building, Seth Rollins laced his boots with the confidence of a man who had already rehearsed the ending in his head 1,000 times. This was his era. His faction. His stage. But even he wasn't immune to the weight of what was about to unfold. Earlier that day, as he walked into the arena, he passed a young fan in the hallway, wearing an old Shield t-shirt, faded and cracked from time. The boy's mother looked at him and simply asked, "Do you miss them?" Seth hadn't answered. He just smiled. But now, staring into the darkness behind the curtain, he couldn't shake the question. Did he? Could he? The match was announced with thunderous fanfare. The arena lights dimmed. Pyro roared. And the video package began, highlighting Roman's rise, Jey's defiance, Seth's manipulation. Commentary scrambled. Was that what I think it was? Michael Cole asked, his voice shaky. Corey Graves said nothing. Roman entered first. The arena was divided, cheers, jeers, gasps. He walked with purpose, head down, hair wet, aura cold. But when he reached the bottom of the ramp and looked up at the stage, something shifted in his expression. Next was Jey. Fire in his step, rage in his eyes. The crowd roared for him, not because they trusted him, but because they feared what he might do. His entrance wasn't just a walk to the ring. It was a walk into judgment. And then came Seth. Flanked by his faction, Braun Breaker, J.D. McDonough, and the newly anointed disciple, Carmelo Hayes, he walked like a god among heathens. Draped in gold, eyes hidden behind shimmering glasses, a smug grin carved onto his face. But it was a mask. And anyone who looked closely could see the tremble in his hands as he ascended the steel steps. The bell rang. And for the first 60 seconds, no one moved. It was Roman and Seth in the center. Jey and Braun circling. The crowd didn't chant. They didn't cheer. They just watched. Because they knew what they were witnessing. Not a match. A burial. And then it began. Fists flew. Boots cracked. Bodies collided. But the story wasn't in the action. It was in the glances. The hesitation in Roman's punches when they landed too close to Seth's jaw. The flicker of guilt in Seth's smirk when he curb-stomped Jey without restraint. The subtle glance toward the entrance ramp after each near fall, as if waiting. As if hoping. Backstage, Triple H paced like a general watching a battle unfold beyond his control. He hadn't authorized the flash of the Shield logo. No one had. It had somehow appeared on the production queue without warning. When he questioned the truck crew, all they could offer was a shrug and a line of code that had somehow been triggered, anonymously. Some believed it was a hacker. Others believed it was Moxley. And then, at the 20-minute mark, the arena lights flickered. Not the usual dimming for theatrics. A hard flicker. Real. Unsanitized. Electricity rebelling. The crowd screamed. The referee looked toward the timekeeper. And in that moment, brief, surreal, unforgettable, the lights went out. Total blackness. 10 seconds of silence. Then a spotlight. One single spotlight shining down at the top of the arena. A figure stood there, not moving. Hood pulled tight. Head down. No music. No pyro. Just the slow, steady, suffocating weight of presence. The crowd erupted. Moxley. 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 But the figure didn't move. Didn't speak. And then disappeared into the shadows. Vanished. No entrance. No confrontation. Just gone. But the damage had been done. The ring paused in motion. Roman froze mid-spear. Seth lowered his guard. Jey looked to the sky, jaw hanging open. That moment became the match. Because in that brief pause, they all remembered who they were. What they were. And what they had lost. The match resumed. Brutal. Unforgiving. A war that left blood on the mat and hearts broken in the stands. But no matter who landed the final blow, it didn't matter. Because the story wasn't about the winner. It was about the ghost. Later that night, as paramedics checked on bruised bodies and reporters flooded the parking lot with questions, no one could answer the only thing the world wanted to know. Was it really him? Had Jon Moxley returned? Had Dean Ambrose whispered a final farewell? Or had the Phantom of the Shield come back one last time? To watch his brothers destroy the house they built? The chaos of SummerSlam left more than just bruised bodies in its wake. It left silence. A silence that stretched long into the night, beyond the lights, beyond the celebrations, beyond the carefully scripted post-show interviews. This wasn't the kind of silence that followed victory. It was the kind that came after something sacred had been broken. The WWE Universe erupted online. The image of the shadowed figure under the lone spotlight spread like wildfire. Reddit threads exploded. Twitter was a frenzy. TikTok was flooded with replays, slow-motion breakdowns, side-by-side comparisons of the figure's silhouette with that of Jon Moxley. Fans were convinced. It was him. But there was no confirmation. No tweet. No Instagram story. No backstage photo. Nothing. Only the speculation. Only the questions. Back in the production trucks, WWE technicians reviewed the security footage from the lighting grid. That figure had entered through a staff-only corridor used only for electrical maintenance. No keycard swipe. No staff record. Whoever it was knew the building's architecture well enough to bypass every known protocol. One staffer swore he saw a man in a black hoodie leave through the loading dock moments after the lights came back on. But there was no video. No proof. Just whispers. Inside the locker room, Roman Reigns sat in front of his gear bag, hands unwrapped, wrists red from the friction. Sweat clung to his body like regret. The match had ended in disqualification. Chairs, tables, and finishers had left the canvas looking like a crime scene. But it wasn't the result that haunted Roman. It was the spotlight. That silent figure at the top of the arena. He didn't tell anyone what he felt when he looked up into the darkness. But deep down, he knew. Not just who it was, but why. He hadn't seen Moxley in person since the night of his leukemia announcement years ago. And in many ways, he blamed himself for never making the effort to reconnect afterward. Fame had a way of building walls even brothers struggled to scale. And now, as the echoes of a match built on vengeance settled into WWE history, Roman realized something far more painful than any betrayal. That Moxley wasn't there to fight. He was there to mourn. Across the arena, Seth Rollins was treated by the medical team. A gash above his right eye. Bruised ribs. Possibly a fractured wrist. But the pain didn't show on his face. What did was confusion. Seth had seen the figure too. Had locked eyes with the silhouette. And in that single, infinite moment, everything they had buried came rushing back. The parking lot brawl in 2014. The betrayal chair shot. The icy hospital visit after Roman's first diagnosis. The bitter phone call that ended with Moxley hanging up in silence. For years, Seth had poured every ounce of ambition into erasing the past. Into becoming a character that didn't need the Shield. That didn't need them. But now, with one glance from a man he hadn't spoken to in years, all the armor cracked. When the medic asked if he needed anything, Seth didn't respond. He just stared at his hands. Later that night, WWE released an official statement. It didn't confirm or deny the identity of the mystery figure. It simply said, "Tonight's SummerSlam event was one for the ages. We acknowledge the questions surrounding the brief appearance during the main event." At this time, WWE has no official comment. But fans weren't waiting for WWE to speak. They wanted Moxley. And so, they searched. By morning, the internet had dissected the spotlight scene from every angle. Analysis channels ran frame-by-frame breakdowns. Forensic audio experts tried to enhance crowd audio to capture any whispered cues. One video claimed that just before the lights went out, the crowd near the top deck heard a faint mutter. This was never supposed to happen. Was it real? Was it fake? No one knew. But that didn't stop the speculation from growing into mythology. And yet, through all the chaos, Moxley remained silent. Until 48 hours later. It was a short clip, uploaded to the same hidden channel. No promo, no intro, no hashtags. Just him, sitting at the edge of a motel bed, hoodie off this time, hair damp, eyes bloodshot. He didn't look like a wrestling legend. He didn't look like a returning hero. He looked like a man unraveling. "I wasn't supposed to be there," he said. "I just needed to see it." He paused, swallowed. "To see what we became." He shook his head. "I watched two men I used to call my brothers beat each other like strangers. I saw fire in their eyes, but no soul behind it. It wasn't about gold. It wasn't even about pride. It was about pain. Pain that's been rotting under the surface since the day we stopped being real with each other." He looked into the lens. Not like a performer. Not like a character. Like a man asking for understanding. "I didn't show up to start a feud. I didn't come to make a statement. I came to say goodbye." The air in the room felt heavy. You could almost hear him breathe. "When we started this thing, we weren't perfect. Hell, we weren't even friends at first. But we became something. Something pure. Something real. Three broken guys carrying each other through the fire." His voice cracked. "And now I see you both out there, pretending like that didn't matter. Like we didn't matter." He wiped his face with his sleeve. "I'm not coming back. I'm not challenging anyone. I'm not showing up to Raw. Or SmackDown. Or any goddamn stage." He leaned closer. "But I am watching. And I hope, no, I pray, you remember what it felt like when we were more than just names on a card." He stood up, walked toward the door. And before exiting the frame, he turned back and said, "Don't let this end in hate. Let it end in truth." Then, silence. No music. No fade out. Just static. And for many, that was the real moment SummerSlam ended, not in the ring, but in that motel room. With one man, broken by memory, begging for peace. Back in WWE headquarters, the conversation shifted. Moxley's words hit creative like a pipe bomb. Some believed he had reignited a spark that could redefine wrestling storytelling. Others believed he had closed a chapter that needed to stay buried. But for Roman and Seth, the fallout was personal. Roman Reigns canceled 2 appearances. Seth Rollins skipped Media Week. And quietly, rumors began to swirl that WWE was considering a future storyline, a tribute, a final chapter, not to bring the Shield back together, but to end it properly. One source said the working title was simple, The Final Fist. But whether that ever comes to life remains to be seen. Because the wounds are still fresh. And some ghosts aren't ready to rest.